Welcome to the VŌC Podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of the VŌC Podcast, in which I'll be interviewing game developer and writer Chet Faliszek, whom you guys might know best for his work on some of the Valve games such as Left 4 Dead and/or Team Fortress 2, and his current project called the Anacrusis. Thank you so much for coming on, Chet. How are you doing today?
Good. Getting ready for the holiday weekend.
Oh, yeah, that sounds really good, and I'm glad that you could hop on and we can have this cool chat.
Sure.
Right. So many of the fans might know you, for your work at Valve, but do you
Yep.
think you could introduce yourself a bit and your background in the gaming industry?
Sure. People would know me from 12 years I was at Valve. Wrote on a lot of different games from like Half-Life 2 Episode 1 and 2 to as project lead in the Left 4 Dead series. Did work on Team Fortress as well as the Portal series, CS:GO, and others. Before that, I was just a writer in the industry, and we had a comedy website. Now I'm CEO of a company called Stray Bombay. Bombay is our breed of cat. They're the breed of cat I have, and they were strays when we found them. And so that's why we named the company, and we make co-op games because I really like co-op games. I really think games do something special as a medium of giving you these shared experiences where you can connect together. And so we have a new game out called Anacrusis, and we actually just released versus mode. But even though it's competitive, we still are about hanging out with friends and joking around. And so it's a very fun version of competitive.
Oh, so what is your part in like Stray Bomb and the Anacrusis? Do you only do writing, or perhaps do you do something else too?
Oh no. So in all of the games I've worked on, I've done more than writing.
Hmm.
Here it's from design to actually doing some of the light engineering side of things, as well as level design and some other things. Yeah, it's always kind of been a mixed set of things that I do.
Oh, I see, because you usually just get credited as writer, or at least on IMDb is what it shows.
IMDb is the worst source ever you can go to for any credits on
Hmm.
anything dealing with video games. It
Hmm.
is. It is 100%. Uh, doesn't know who did anything on anything, and makes the worst guesses at it. It is a bad
Oh
resource,
yeah,
except
by
for
all,
voice actors. It does
yeah.
voice actors because they're in the union and it knows that. And
Hmm.
other than that, it misinforms you on every single game and person involved in games.
Oh yeah, that could be true. It's just wrong how anyone can edit that. And
Yeah,
and
it's just more. It's. I mean, I think there's some other sites that try to do some stuff with games, really, but
Mhm.
games are always. There's a lot of things going on, and it's really hard to ever point to one thing and say, "Hey, I did this." And there's such community projects that way that you hate to take the credit for it, so people tend not to talk about it, except to say how bad IMDb is. IMDb is so bad they have my height wrong. I don't know why that bugs me so much, but they do. The height
Really?
wrong on my description. Like who would even put in my height? Who cares about my
Yeah,
height?
that's a good question. Yeah,
And
like
yet,
who
and
who
yet they
cares?
got it wrong.
Well. Isn't that surprising?
Yeah.
Well, but I mean, if they don't really know or they don't have a source to fill that information in from, then why would they just add it? Why would they assume that what you did was just writing?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's just because they are focused about the celebrity side of what
Hmm.
the industry is. And so that's kind of what they highlight, right?
Well, yeah, that could be very much true. Yeah. Getting back to Valve, how did you get hired? How did it all start?
So, like I said, me and Eric we had a video game website, Old Man Murray, that we were writing for. It was like a satirical take on the culture of the time. If you go back to it now, clearly, like satirical takes in the culture of the time are hard to look at back and understand why they were significant then, or even what the jokes are, or if you're offended by it, fair enough. Um, because it's just a different time. But so we were writing a lot back then, back when the internet was very small. I mean, at one point we hosted Penny Arcade because their servers went down. Like it was this very small
Oh.
world back then. Um, and so we were writing and doing comedy there and got picked up by some of the game magazines and started writing guides and some other stuff. Eric did a lot of reviews. I always felt uncomfortable writing reviews, but I like doing game guides. Those were fun. And Gabe reached out and said, "Hey, do you want to come work at Valve?" Did it in an email. We actually somehow Eric checked an old account and saw it because I would have skipped it. And we're like, sure, can you tell us more? And he's like, no, just come out to Seattle. So we flew out to Seattle. Our interview, so there's like a kind of well-known like 8-hour interview process that most people go through. I didn't go through that. I hung out with Gabe and a couple other people for a couple days and talked about approaches to writing and creativity in games and long form narrative. And from that, they just at the last day, Eric actually had to go early to catch a plane because we weren't living in the same city at that point. We'd grown up together, 18 on, 16 on, growing up together. But he lived in a different city, he got up to a different plane, and he says, like, if they offer us the job, say yes, and you negotiate our salaries. And Gabe said, hey, we'd like to, at lunch when Eric was gone, Gabe said, hey, we'd like to hire you, and then offered us a salary. And I instantly said yes. I did no negotiations. That was a bad deal on that, but it was a good deal. And then we came to work for Valve shortly after. They shipped Half-Life 2 in November of 2004, and we came to work in December of 2004, which is a weird time to start work, but it's also kind of nice because we thought we would come in when everyone else is kind of laid back and taking it easy. And then we were just sure we were gonna get fired, and they didn't fire us, so it was good.
So did you know exactly what you were getting into?
No. So at the time they were exploring a lot of different things, and they just realized they wanted writers. Some of those things then would surface as what the SFM shorts were and those kind of experiences, as well as just more games. They thought story was important, but also thought they were overtaxing Mark Laidlaw. And be clear, there was also Bill Fletcher and Bill Van Buren were also helping with some of the writing at the time of the Half-Life series for Mark, because one person writing all of that was just kind of being overwhelmed.
Oh yeah, definitely, yeah. So the first thing you've worked on at Valve was episode 1. Is that correct?
Well, so the very, very first thing I did there was I shipped the Day of Defeat source website. I
Oh,
helped
you did that.
do some stuff on there because I was complaining about how the website looked like crap, and they're like, well, hey, you work at Valve now, you can fix that. And I said, okay. That's the same website still up today, so I did okay. Then did a lot of play testing for Half-Life 2 on the Xbox. And then Half-Life 2 episode 1, where I didn't really know what I was doing, but I tried to help.
Okay. Were there perhaps any specific ideas that you came up with?
No, really, Half-Life 2 episode 1 was, I mean, I did some writing there, but really it was just kind of learning some of the systems and kind of understanding the tools that were available to us. So they had the very early start of what would become the response role system, and realizing, oh, wait, if we can control when we talk, we can do more. A lot of comedies timing, and so this is essentially scratching back and trying to take control of timing, even though we didn't do a lot of jokes in episode 2 or episode 1.
Yeah, and episode 1 was relatively short.
Yes.
Yeah, but I mean, it was fine. It was a fun game. And then in episode 2, well, we mainly talk about voice acting on this channel, right? And I like to point out, the Vorts, the Vort voice actor, Lewis, what was his name? Well, the guy who did them in episode 1 and Half-Life 2, he was replaced in episode 2 by Tony Todd, I believe.
Yeah.
Could you share anything about that, if you recall that moment?
That was just, he would take breaks, want to take breaks during the voice session to smoke, which was just an oddity because normally you want to save your voice, but I guess for that voice you could go crazy. Yeah, and he was fine working with. I remember that session. Nothing really sticks out to me. It was pretty straightforward. The Vortigaunts, are the also enslaved people from that game that then work with the humans. And yeah, we did a lot with them with really like Alex's recovery there. And I remember that kind of, at first we were lost, I think, kind of pulling that off. And then I think we had made some changes on how that went. The Vortigaunt scene with her, where you get to work with Sheckley in defending that area. That was fun. But the Vortigaunt stuff itself was just pretty kind of straightforward.
Oh, I see. So, it wasn't anything difficult to think about. Yeah, I see. It's funny because now I'll get to Left 4 Dead a bit. But so you're mainly known, for your main work on Left 4 Dead because you were the leader of it. But As you may recall, Left 4 Dead back in the day in the pre-footage was a lot different in the version that they call the Turtle Rock Studios version, if you remember. It was somewhat different from what we have now. Can you tell anything?
Here's the deal. None of that's true. I keep trying to explain that to people.
Okay.
You never saw the game until we started working on it.
Mm-hmm.
There's a couple of us from Valve that I was one of the first people I'd gotten to play a really, really early build of it. Michael Booth had brought it up, and I told Gabe over lunch that I'm like, oh my God, I got to play this game Left 4 Dead, or not, it was Left 4 Dead, it was Terror at the time. And I'm like, it's amazing. This is like my dream game of like, I love zombie stuff. This is just it. And he's like, oh, why don't you just go work on it? I'll introduce you to Michael Booth, and you and Eric can go right on it. And we sent Michael email where Eric pointed out we don't know much about making games, but we know a lot about efficiency. So we're going to fire 10% of your staff, which is a weird email to send to someone you don't really know.
Oh, yeah.
But it was pretty funny. Me and Eric often will just go for the joke if we can go for the joke. Mike was pretty good about it, and invited us down, and we actually spent the week there working with them. And Eric's like, hey, I'm going to go back and work on it. I was actually working on some SFM stuff, and I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna stick down and stay another week. I want to make this work, and we'll figure this out. And so when people talk about the beta version, I think they're talking about is we hadn't redesigned some of the characters. The characters stayed the same, but some of the design of them, they were very grungy and dark and dirty and very hard to think that you wanted to play them. There's something about creating aspirational characters. Aspiration is a word we kick around a lot, of like, you want to play that character. If you don't want to play that character, if you're like, that character is just dirty and gross and nothing interesting and just glum and gloomy, you're not going to have memorable characters. If you have people with personality and things that they want to attach to, then you will. And as we started talking about the characters that way, it became clear that the models didn't represent that, and we needed to update that. Yeah. And so there is a version of the characters that look that way that we still showed. I think we showed to early press. I'm trying to remember who we showed it to. We showed it to somebody where we didn't have a good language to talk about the game yet. And I remember somebody other than me calling it, well, it's like Counter-Strike, but for co-op games. And I'm like, that's a bad way to put it. But then it was like later we kept developing that. And then we showed it in Germany at an EA event, and then did a press event after that. And that's when people started seeing it more. And that's when you see it. And really, I think when most people talk about that, what they're talking about is Francis, the biker going from the big hairy guy where the hair was problematic in the Source engine to the shaved headed character. And we talked about that a lot with the one artist who's kind of driving some of those changes. And it was about, he was basing it on this surfer guy that he knew that had the right attitude and personality. And we're trying to talk about that in America. A shaved head often denotes a different kind of personality or something, and how we should think about that. And then once we paired the voice up with him, that worked pretty well, and we were all kind of satisfied. I mean, I think, if you look at, like, especially I think Lewis between the two, that's very striking. But the game itself is the same game. It's more the just the character art that got updated.
I see. Getting back to the characters and the voices, when I've had Earl Alexander on a while back, he said that when he first auditioned, he did like a more deeper voice. Could you say something about that, if you remember anything like that?
I don't remember his audition tapes. I just remember working with him, and he's got a lot of energy. And so you kind of want to harness that energy, and you want to harness it in a positive way. And for us, it was about bringing character that we knew from growing up in Cleveland, of like, there's this guy Joe we worked with, and we're trying to channel, like, you always try to pull from people that and trying to channel a little bit of that Joe into it, because Joe would just crack us up, and he's always super energetic, and always kind of giving me a little bit of digs, but doing it in the most polite, nice way. But yeah, that was just wanting to take what he was bringing to the game, and really just harnessing it and having that be that positive energy. And it's always that first session. Like, I don't remember the audition of his, but I remember the first session. You always write for, well, first you're just writing for just a lot of crap you got to get done, but you're also trying to find that character and their voice and how they talk about things and what they can do. and he can do the glass half full lines better than anybody. He can just jump in there and he's excited and he's got that energy.
Yeah.
So then you start writing to that and you start writing for that and that kind of excitement. And so that those first sessions are always that just discovering the character. And definitely in him, we discovered this guy who would just bring energy and enthusiasm, but yet still be him. He's still Earl, he's still Lewis, he's still got that character in him.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. I mean, unlike Vince Valenzuela, his normal voice is very different from Francis, his whole personality. As to Earl, he, if he just gets happy or excited, you can just hear Lewis in him, so it's
yeah. Well, so Vince, it's funny you mentioned him because we were recording him. We just started, and again, you're shooting in the dark a little bit when you first start working with somebody, and we're recording him. In the middle of recording, Eric just creeps up behind me, and he's just like, "Oh, this sounds just like what's his face? Comedian that's always on Howard Stern. Comedian who's always on Howard Stern. Who is that?
I have no idea.
All right, but he sounded like that. Yeah. He sounded like that guy. And instantly when he said that, Artie Lang.
Oh yeah.
And instantly when he said that to me, I'm like, oh God, all I hear is Artie Lang. This is the worst. This is the worst because Artie Lang is not a good character to be. This is not Artie Lang. And then it was right in this session, Bill Van Buren, who also helps direct sessions, just turned to me. He's like, it's okay. I can fix this. I'm like, all right, I trust Bill. And Bill did. He lowered his voice an octave using some tools. And that's and some other filter stuff. And so that's on his voice for all the games we've lowered it. And so that's not his talking. That's not his real voice. Vince did a great job acting. Don't get me wrong, but the voice itself will just, once we got straight into that space and it sounded like Artie Lang, there was just that oh God, we don't want Artie Lang in our game.
Oh, that's weird. Okay, I mean, I didn't know of that. Of course, you made a TikTok video about it. Do you think Vince think of it that way, or?
I don't know. Vince was super happy about it. He is one of the actors that kind of came back. I think when we used them again in Left 4 Dead 2 and did the crossover, he is like, hey, this game's popular. We should retalk what my salary is. And we're like, yeah, that's cool. So he had an understanding that he was popular. It was not, I wanted to be clear. Vince was totally within his rights to do that. That was totally fine. But yeah, he understood. I think so. He was happy with it. I think he had found some success and some notoriety out of the role. Francis is a great character. I love writing for Francis. He's got a lot of fun little bits in him that crack me up.
Francis is a very good character, and I mean all the characters that were written, it goes really well together in this team, And yes. How did you go about the casting of these characters?
So it depends. Back then, we would go to local voice actors. For Left 4 Dead 1, we went to local voice companies, essentially talent agencies, and say, hey, who do you have? What roles do you have? These are the characters we're looking for. I'll tell you what, no matter what you write as your description of the male character, someone's going to come back and they're going to be doing this prospectory voice with you. Let's go sit around the campfire. And it's always somebody comes back with that voice. I have no idea why. But so we would do that. And then for Left 4 Dead 2, after the success of Left 4 Dead 1, I pushed and said, hey, let's expand out our talent pool. We're making big games. We can hire big people. And again, Bill Van Buren actually reached out, and we started working actually with the talent agency that worked with what's his face from The Wire, and that's why we've got a bunch of characters, a bunch of people he's worked with before. Excuse me.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah, I know what you're talking about. And then from The Wire, you also had Chad Coleman.
So Chad Coleman's from The Wire. Eric Layden is from Generation Kill, who he had worked with as well. I almost said Michael Simon. Michael Simon's the chef. David Simon.
Oh, okay, I see.
And so we got a lot from there, and that's where we also then got Rochelle, and then Hugh Dillon was the only actor we ever got that said, "Hey, I played Left 4 Dead 1 in my trailer I love this game. I want to be in this.
Oh,
And
really?
that's
So,
how he got cast for Left 4 Dead 2.
oh, that's
Yeah.
funny. And he
Which
was
was
so fitting, yeah.
which was great because so many times you have to describe to actors a bunch about your game. And for
Mm-hmm.
him, it was just like, nope. I'm like, it's like The Witch. He's like, yeah, I know what The Witch is. I know what The Witch is.
That's real cool. Who would have thought?
Yeah. So he was great. He was
And
fun
he's
to work.
and he's also a singer, especially now of this band called Headstones. If you might know.
Yeah, I've seen that. I've seen that. Yeah.
Yeah, Nick singing is just real cool.
Yeah.
Getting back to Left 4 Dead 1, apparently you've worked with Ellen McLean on some
Yes.
stuff, especially for The Witch. And apparently there was like a character called
I don't know.
Amanda Slater.
She's not The Witch. The Witch
Uh,
is a
I
pre-record.
remember her telling me something about recording for those musical kind of something, the operas or whatever she did for The Witch, those intros. I don't know.
There's no musical opera. That's all Portal stuff. She didn't do The Witch.
Okay, then that's clear. But apparently she did some Amanda Slater character, where they were a bickering couple,
Yes.
with John Patrick Lowry, and she didn't make it into the game at the end. Can you tell us something about that?
It was just so Left 4 Dead is you often have characters at the end, what we call talking doors. They're people, they're characters we never make the models of, but that you interact with and either come pick you up in this case. And it was a
Mm-hmm.
couple at the end of uh, Death Toll.
Yeah, Death Toll.
And I don't even remember. We were just going back and forth on those. All of the stuff like in a game like Left 4 Dead is how much information can you get out as quickly as possible, and sometimes things just the back and forth just take too long,
Mm-hmm.
and players are just like, I can't skip this, but I want to get going. And so how do you do that? I don't remember. I remember we had them together as a couple, and honestly, I don't remember. That sounds horrible, but I don't remember the process of why
That's
we
fine.
chose what we ended up choosing to ship.
Okay, I see. Well, she said that you people at Valve didn't actually know that they were married for a long time, because Ellen McLean and John Patrick Lowry, their last names are different, and that when they were recording Team Fortress 2 is when you found out.
Well, yeah,
Anything?
Team Fortress 2,
Uh-huh.
definitely, which would have been the same as Portal and all of that. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
before that, I don't think we worked that much with Ellen. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that could be true.
She only did the Overwatch announcer before that, I think, for Half-Life 2.
Okay.
Yeah. Moving on. So yeah, for Left 4 Dead 2, you cast new voices, and you've worked with these voices, and a lot of them have not discussed their roles for Left 4 Dead. You have any opinions about that, as to why that may be, or why do you think that?
I don't know. Actors can choose to do as they want. I have no
Of
problem
course,
with
yeah,
them
by
choosing
all
not
means.
to talk about something or talk about something. And they also may not feel that they're the right people to talk about it because
Mm-hmm.
they're at the very end of the process. They're getting often in reading lines where they don't understand the context of everything inside of there. So that's fine. And some people do play the games and they do understand.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, if they don't want to play, if they don't want to talk about it, that's fine. I don't. Yeah.
I understand. Do you think there were any important lessons that you learned, during your time at Valve, both as a game developer and as a member of the gaming community?
Endless number. I we need something more specific because it's like it was very much a learning process. One of the I think advantages I have is I'm not that smart. So when smart people talk, I kind of pay attention and learn a lot that way. And so learned a lot about just how approaching problems and even working with actors to the way they think about writing. I mean, Laidlaw was a great mentor that way of he's done a lot of great character stuff. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever experienced any burnouts during your time at Valve?
But I think everybody has ups and downs. For me, probably the biggest would have been so when we shift Left 4 Dead 1, we crunched a lot.
Mm-hmm.
We crunched a lot. It was a very bumpy game. It was very crashy, very problematic. And so during the Orange Box, I had instituted this thing where I grabbed all the 360s out of people's offices and put them in the hallway and had people testing pretty much 24/7. And we did that again with Left 4 Dead, but we said, hey, this is a party game and we're just looking for crashes. We just need people playing because we don't go to outside QA at the time. And so we had a lot of people just bring their friends in, and eventually we would just we would bring beer in so that they could drink and pizza and hang out. And then at one point, someone's like, hey, I'm coming in. Should I go on a beer run? And they sent that to a company-wide email, and I'm like, oh God, Scott Lynch is going to think I've lost control of this project and I'm running the company into the ground. I got to fix this. We fixed it by getting kegs put in the fridge. And then we didn't run out of beer. But it was very, very much 24/7 kind of focus there at the end to get that out. And during that, I started getting very tired. And then we shipped it. We kind of reacted to it. And then a snowstorm hit Seattle. And I was like getting close to the point of like, I don't know if I want to keep doing this. I'm so tired. I don't like, it's after you ship something, you often look at it and like you can't see what you did anymore. You just see everybody, and you're happy for that, but you're also like, ugh. And I was really kind of just burnt out and kind of depressed. And I just started playing Castle Crashers because I got snowbound with the snow. It was like 2 feet of snow. And in the time, Seattle only had one snow plow. And all they did by our street was they came down and put a sign that said road closed. Like people were skiing to the local restaurant. It was that bad for a couple days. And I just played Castle Crasher. And my wife knew enough to leave me alone. And at the end of playing Castle Crashers for a couple days, I felt better. And I was like, yeah, let's get back to work.
Oh, wow. What a way to cheer yourself up.
Yeah, I still like Castle Crashers. It's fun.
Oh, that's cool. Some things just don't change.
Yeah.
It's funny because Left 4 Dead 2 was released right 1 year after the first game. Why? Or can you share anything about that? Why would you make a sequel so soon after the first game?
There's a lot of reasons why. I mean, one is like that burnout and that like, hey, it took us so long to get here. Now that we know how to do it, what should we do? I mean, there's a lot of other reasons as well that I don't like to talk about Valve stuff that is still current, or I don't know, that there's people still there that involved with it. It was more for us about, we know how to make this game. Let's make this game. And that, was the ability to do that. And also just to fix underlying, the source engine people think is monolithic. But the source engine that Left 4 Dead was built on was its own branch that was very problematic. Like Left 4 Dead, I think the game loads itself 3 times the first time. Each map loads itself twice. And it was just because there's bugs in here and we don't know how to deal with these or something. And so, some of that was cleaning that up. Some of that was new ideas. Some of that was that expression of wanting to do this now that we know how to do it. There was a lot of, like, there was not one sole thing you could put at and look at it. It was an experiment as well, knowing that this is a different way to approach this and a different thing, but also knowing we could not build the set of tools that we wanted to build to support the game in the current form. And either we would need to go dark for a really long time or do something new. So there's a lot of things. I don't want somebody to walk out of this going, and that's the reason why, because there was just so many different things. And some of them I'm not going to really get into. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's fine.
Particularly good podcast, but there you go.
That's all good, all good. And I want to stay at Left 4 Dead for a little more while, because at one point, in like 2017 or so, there were some leaks of some apparently Left 4 Dead 3 maps, which I'm not sure if they were ever confirmed or not. But apparently,
so I don't know exactly what you're talking about, but in general, as they were working on Source 2. We often use Left 4 Dead as the test bed. So you may see things that came out of there that were really more the test bed than, hey, we're making a new Left 4 Dead. With everything at Valve, there's a bunch of stuff happening in the background. Things are being tried and whatnot. But like Left 4 Dead's this good base to try things on, because it's a multiplayer game, so you're going to exercise that muscle. It's co-op, so you're working together, right? Like there's a bunch of good things there to try. I mean, at one point, during Source 2 development and stuff, there was an introduction of the Squirrel language. Squirrel we actually used in Portal 2 to do the dialogue system that way. and then having it in a different style game and being able to play with it really opened up and let me do some cool things for a while. They've since removed it before they shipped, but it was interesting having those set of kind of really powerful tools.
If you would have had a choice, would have you made a Left 4 Dead 3? Would have you continued the story?
That's the kind of thing that's up to Valve. It's Valve's game, not mine. So, you know, I continue to be interested in making co-op games because I think that's a really special thing that games do. And I think I've said this a bunch, but I'll say it again, is there's this moment where I already liked it and I liked how I hung out with people and played those games, even the non-competitive side, right? But there's this letter I got from a guy in the military where he said, hey, you saved my marriage. And I made him explain that. And it was that he would play Left 4 Dead with his wife because he was stationed in Iraq and she was back home. And if they got on the phone, they had to talk about things. And she talked about the dryer's broke. And he's like, hey, people are shooting at me and this sucks. But if they played Left 4 Dead together, they had this shared moment, this shared experience together. And they just talked about the game in the moment. And that ability for games and co-op games to be able to bring us to those moments and have those kind of experiences where you leave that with somebody and you have a different kind of connection with them, or you've strengthened the connections you've had. And so, you know, I'm going to continue making co-op games. And so that's, you know, what I left to go do.
That's why you're making the Anacrusis right now.
Correct.
Do you think you could share some information about that game?
Sure. What would you like to know?
Well, can the fans get it anywhere at this point, at this moment?
It's available on Steam and Xbox. And actually, I don't know how long do you wait to release these?
A few days.
Okay, because yeah, it's on sale right now for half off, in fact.
Is
and
it till the 13th?
It's to the end of the summer sale now, I think.
Okay, then
whatever that is. I should know these things. I don't.
Yeah, we should have enough time.
All right. But yeah, so I mean, I was just kind of kidding you there. The Anacrusis was, I really, really, really like late 60s, early 70s sci-fi up until Greebles were introduced, kind of the that style. I really like kind of the Andromeda strain or 2001 Space Odyssey, that very clean, very 70s weird vibe. And I wanted to make something in that space, and sci-fi is interesting because it lets us have a bunch more tools than you would have in a game like Left 4 Dead, where you have really kind of practical kind of things. Here in the Anacrusis, we have wild, fantastical things. We have grenades, stasis grenades you can throw that freeze time. And you have wild, weird creatures you're fighting. And just really want to embrace that and kind of explore that side of it. And so that was fun. Like, I like that sci-fi world and I like that kind of thing. And it was important for me as like, so when we first pitched, kind of Gabe was asking me one night about Left 4 Dead, the very first one. And he's like, zombies are cheesy, man. Like, we should do something different. We should make it a horror game. We should make it a monster game, not a zombie game. Why are you guys stressing zombies? I'm like, oh, no. We know zombies are cheesy, but they're not. If the characters in them know they're cheesy, but yet all of a sudden they're in a zombie movie, what's that like? Then they have to deal with, oh, this is reality. And I'm like, there's a way to do this where we embrace the cheesiness of zombies, but make them real. And then 28 Days Later came out, and I think everyone else was like, oh yeah, this makes sense to do it this way. And that's kind of, for the 70s sci-fi, is you can look back at that and go, oh, that's cheesy. That's, that's hokey. But growing up, when I was watching it, because I'm an old man, it was just awesome. It was cool. Like, I didn't think it was cheesy. And so kind of we take that same kind of tone and that way of embracing what that is and bring it to the Anacrusis.
I see. Well, I have saw some footage of the game and it seems really interesting. I have yet to try it out and I'm planning to. Yeah.
Oh, you got to try it out. So like, much like Left 4 Dead, I think the creatures are a big role in it, right? Like, so Left 4 Dead, while you have the characters in there and the voice acting, I know there's a podcast on voice acting, and they have to react to what they can react to. And if you just had zombies, you're going to have a flatter range that they can react to. Where if you have a bunch of different creatures, you can be yelling and screaming and have different reactions, and you can have ones that you really dislike, like people like hate getting puked on in Left 4 Dead. And
Yeah.
same with getting gooed on in Anacrusis, even though it's a very different mechanic underneath of what it's doing.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like, ugh, right.
Yeah.
And so you can generate a lot of the discussion and a lot of the kind of conversation out of there. So in the Anacrusis, we have a character, the spawner, and what it does is actually goes and hides and spawns these little like turrets that come after you. And wanted to have a creature that made characters say, this is a stupid idea, but I'm going to go run down this hall and go kill that thing because it's so pissing me off. Right. Because often when
Yeah.
you write for characters, you want to bring forward kind of what the player's thinking. Right. I can hit on that in a sec, but it's like you want to do that. And so then you want to create creatures that evoke those emotions. You can't just do it blind. It's just not creating the characters. You need to think
Yeah.
about what the creatures are and then build those creatures out. And so for the Anacrusis, we did a lot of that where thought about how do the characters respond to that? How do they think about that? Because one of the things, not to make this a long-winded response, one of the things of when you're writing for characters is I kind of do it in 3 stages. Is so first I run through the game and it's just like I make notes of like, hey, we got to talk about this, right? And it's always that problem of speech is when you look at stairs, you can say these stairs are those stairs. Those are very 2 different things. And if you get them wrong, like if you say those stairs and you're standing next to it, it's weird, right? So you have to write all this out, right? And have that ready.
Yeah.
And then you play through as the character and how would the character react to this? Like they're like, I'm lost. Where am I? What's going on? Oh, there's this creature and how they respond to it. And then you play through as the player. And what does the player think? What's their emotional response to what they're seeing? They don't have the same information as the character, but they often overlap some. And how can you then combine those 2 and have those experiences? So when like Zoe says, oh God, they got, God, when they see the God is dead thing, then like, oh no, they got God. She's evoking both herself and what the player feels. And so like Francis's I hate stuff actually comes from, I saw a piece of art that I had gotten sick of seeing and I had asked the artist to change it. We didn't change it. And I'm like, I hate this art. And then I was like, I hate lawyers. And then it's like, oh, that's funny. We should just take that everywhere. And we bring that all the way through.
Yeah.
But that's also like why I like characters like Nick in Left 4 Dead or Lance in the Anacrusis is because those are me. I think of what would an arrogant, self-centered jerk say in this situation. And those are easy to write because I just think, what would I say? But so it's like you kind of want to have that layer there. But with that layer, you have to have the things they're responding to. And those things that they're responding to need to be deliberately built so that you get a different set of emotions evoked from those.
That's a really clever way to think about it, honestly. Getting back to the creatures of Left 4 Dead, were you perhaps present on the recording sessions of those voices and sounds?
For some of them are manufactured. So like the core zombie sound is oh my God, come on.
Mike Patton?
Thank you. God, I can't believe I can't think of Mike's name. He's great. So Mike Moraski, we were trying to think of zombie noises and how to do it. And we had some stock library crap at first in there. And Mike Moraski, I guess he knows Mike Patton as a friend. And he asked him to record some stuff. And Mike Patton has this crazy vocal range. He's super talented. And just came back with just the little snippet, the little 3-minute snippet he did. We still cut that up and shipped a bunch of that because that was some of just the best stuff. But then we went into a recording session with him as well to get some more flavor to it. But the problem when you're trying to record somebody like that you need to avoid is you don't want it to be Scooby-Doo. You don't want it to be like, you don't want to have that fakeness to it. But equally, there's a difference between an alert zombie, an angry zombie, and a hurt zombie. And so how do you do that? And Mike was really great for that. And in fact, at one point, we thought, well, we have some time left. Let's see if we can do the boomer and others. And so for the boomer puking sound, I actually held a trash can while so Mike Patton could retch into it. Like I said, he's dedicated to it.
And it's funny because apparently he's like a really famous singer or two.
Oh yeah, no. Again, he's super talented. He really has an amazing range with his voice and stuff. And that's why I'm embarrassed that I couldn't think of his name off the top of my head. It's been a long day. Get off my case. Get off my case, man.
No problem, man. This time I can forgive you, okay?
All right.
And apparently, he also did the Smoker and the Hunter.
So some of some of the recordings from those got in there as well, and then some of that is manufactured and manipulated of that.
Okay, I see.
Because what we want with those creatures, right, is you want to have noticeable sounds so that when they spawn in, you have an understanding that you have a new threat that you need to worry about
Mhm.
and what that is. And so that was some of that recording came from those sessions.
Okay, I see. And for the second game, there was another guy, I think D. Bradley Baker was his name, and apparently he did Charger and Spitter and Jockey, maybe. Remember that
Yeah,
guy?
again, some of those recording sessions, I think we did when we also did some of the mocap, and I know one of them I couldn't be at because I had to do some press stuff, and it was fine, like because it's a talented team, they know how to do that, they don't need me there.
Mhm.
And so we captured that, and yeah, it's weird to say for a game that I worked on and was so much so on that side of it, some of this stuff was just the people making the creatures understood what we wanted the creatures to be and how we wanted them to sound, and I trusted them.
And those creatures to this day sound so authentic and memorable. If you hear a sound of the Charger or, like the Smoker, you can recognize it. So I think
Yes.
it was an amazing job done by the team,
Yes. Yeah, it's always important with those kind of things. There's a lot of people, like when we talk about this in general, it's just not me. There's a lot of people involved with this, and you just maybe have not heard of their names as much because they're not as uh ego driven as me. But they had just as big of a part in, what was created. And that's always the problem with games of like, how do you talk about that? Because Valve kind of famously just has the flat not just structure, but like how the credits come, it's just everybody in alphabetical order. And those are sometimes people who have even left the company because making a game or writing a game, it's like stew, right? You put the bay leaf in the beginning, you
hmm
pull it out before it's done, but it has a big impact on it, even if you're never eating bay leaf. And
hmm
it really is, that's kind of like making games, is that kind of like this complex nuance about everybody involved in it.
Oh yeah, everyone is important in the making of a game. Let it be, the creators, the mappers, or even the
Yep.
voices. Yeah. You know what? So apparently, and you might know of this, there was a Last Stand update in 2020 for
Yes.
Left 4 Dead 2.
Mhm.
I'm not sure how you probably weren't involved in that anymore, but what was your reaction when that happened and it came out?
Oh, it's great. So I'm friends with a bunch of the modders that were involved in that, and so I was super
Mm-hmm.
excited to see them be able to have their work celebrated by Valve. Yeah, that was absolutely great. And in fact, there's a little graffiti to me in there, tucked away.
Oh, really now? Oh, that's cool.
So
That's
yeah,
cool.
yeah,
Yeah,
and
it was
they're
cool
they,
to see.
they're a great group. The Left 4 Dead modders are just a phenomenal group. In fact, some of them have moved over and been helping us out with the Anacrusis and been modding that as well, which has been really fun to see because they're just
Mm-hmm.
super talented individuals who just kind of love these kind of games, and what they bring to it is really interesting.
Is there a workshop, Steam workshop yet for the Anacrusis, or do you
Yep.
plan to add one?
Yeah,
Okay.
no, there's Steam Workshop support. There's already a bunch of really funny, great stuff in there. It's always when you work with the community, they start reflecting back into the game because
Yeah.
they've got their ideas around it and what they like to see. And we definitely see that in the Anacrusis already. And it's been fun.
Oh yeah, that's cool because Left 4 Dead 2's community, I think the workshop is a really important thing in that community. And if you know Garrus Mod, then they're
Yes.
yeah, too. So it's really the workshop what's keeping it alive in the community. So that's real cool. And workshop support, I think Left 4 Dead 1 didn't have that. So yeah.
Correct. That was I was saying, is that version of the source engine would not have supported what we did.
Mm-hmm.
Is how it loaded things was problematic.
I
Um,
see.
but so
Yeah.
yeah, no, I think that's always a really important thing. And I wish we could get to you. I know like Dota's done some stuff with voice packs and stuff, but you really can't do the full on um voice stuff in the same way officially, just because of the way some of the recording rules are. But it's still fun to see the community getting involved.
Yeah, that's true. And they restored some of the old unused voice lines, I believe, too, for the last time, I
Yeah,
believe.
I always go back and forth on that because I think people think that we just forgot to hook those up, but often I thought that the voice lines did not hit the right tenor,
Mm-hmm.
or there was something about them that I purposely chose not to ship.
Yeah, of
And
course.
people be like, "Oh, I found this, so I hooked it up because I think you wanted this." I'm like, "No, I would have hooked it up. I knew all the audio in our game." So, but
Uh-huh.
that's fine. If the community, if now it's now the community's game. So excuse me, if they want to make those choices, they should make those choices, and
Yeah.
that's fine.
Yeah, that's a nice way to think about it. And actually, I was really curious about something related to the voice work. When the survivors laugh, would you use takes that they recorded for the laughs, or would you also use like outtakes? Perhaps they laughed at a line or something, you know?
So almost all of it is us asking them to laugh. So we would just write
Uh-huh.
in like 3 takes of laughter. And it's funny is you kind of get you learn a lot about the actor in that moment because almost all actors can do some kind of laugh. Uh with one exception, you Dylan. It was like like he just
Okay.
he just like he wasn't a big ad-libbing guy. He liked to work off of like he could own whatever you gave him, but he was not a big ad-libbing person. And laughter is kind of this ad-lib. And so yeah, we would ask people to record that, and only his, I think. I mean, clearly they're asked to be recorded, but his are funny to me always because I know it was a little of pulling teeth to get that laughter out of him.
Yeah, but eventually you did get what you wanted, or
Oh yeah,
at
no,
least
and
something.
again,
Yeah.
he what he brings is awesome. So I'm
Oh,
super
yeah,
happy
yeah.
with that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
because his having his character have kind of almost a protest laugh, I think just fits the character really well.
I mean, if we think about it, yeah, it does. You know, Nick is an asshole, pretty much. So
Yes.
yeah, that's why he's so cool, actually. And I think there was like they were asking people who their favorite survivor it was, and I think Nick was pretty high up
He
in the
should be.
charts.
He's one of
Yeah,
my favorites.
yeah, he is pretty good. Yeah.
I think that and Ellis is another good one. And then also Zoe. And I like in for the Anacrusis, I really like Liu. So she was a character that was at first I didn't want in the game. I think I was worried of female characters take me the longest to write just because uh I'm not a woman and I want to be sensitive. Like I want to nail that. Like every character that we make, I do a lot of research on the characters and kind of create this mass body of notes. And we're already biting off Nessa because I thought Nessa was a character that I had not seen in games before that I did want to see as people that I knew. Um, it's actually the name Nessa comes from. There's an Intel engineer that I would run into at events. She'd always ask me if I remembered her name, and I'm like, yeah, it's Nessa, because I forgot it once, so she never let
Mm-hmm.
me live that down. But so then she got in our game, so hey, that worked for her. But that was easy. But Liu is different, and then I just really found the right person with the right energy because she's a very bubbly. She's almost like Lewis kind of character
Mm-hmm.
where she just throws herself into everything. And those are fun characters, but that is not me, if you can tell. I'm a little more low energy. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so bringing that character there without making her stupid or silly, but having that took a lot until I found that. Now she's one of my favorite characters to write for.
Oh, I see. I kind of want to ask you about this. If you ever thought about, or if you ever took inspiration from a past character that you've written for like the Anacrusis, or like if you ever considered working with actors that you've previously worked with for different games for the
Well, I would
Anacrusis.
worry people would think like I would about the actor in a different character just because I think people would equate the voice, and I would worry about that crossover.
Mm-hmm.
Unless we were wanting that crossover. Um, but definitely, I think there are types of characters. Like, I think if you listen to the Anacrusis, you would probably go, Nick and Lance are similar, but they're also very different. So,
Mm-hmm.
Nick is very much a character that's looking at the world and going, I've gotten taken, so I'm taking what I can take. And he very much has this kind of bitterness to him with that underlying kind of sarcasm, where Lance has had the whole world handed to him, and he very much has this almost like airheaded misunderstanding of things because he's just never had to deal with it before. And so while they're similar, they're also very different in my eyes. And so I think, when you're writing a character, you kind of always do just a little bit of that kind of walking of, yeah, sure, they're similar, but they're also very different. And yeah.
Okay, that explains it. And Left 4 Dead 2 had quite a few crossovers, to all sorts of different games like I think Dying Light and Resident Evil 6.
Also
And
the Sniper series, and a couple well, the Left 4 Dead series also had it with the Payday series
yeah, that's true.
yeah.
Yeah, and I want to ask you, like, what is your opinion about, with these crossovers? And sometimes, in some cases, even the character voice reprises their roles for these crossovers. For example, I kind of want to bring in Team Fortress 2 into this, but if you may know, Team Fortress 2 had a crossover with Paladins, and there was like an engineer kind of character, and Grand Goody voiced it as the engineer, like an engineer skin. Like, what is your opinion on these crossovers?
Well, so for I gotta speak to the Left 4 Dead stuff. So at Valve, there's a point where like somebody kind of babysits the IP, and if one of the business people say, "Hey, somebody wants to do a crossover," they'll reach out. And for me, it was Left 4 Dead. For the Payday one, Ulf is a friend of mine. He now runs 10 Chambers. They just did GTFO, and he's a good friend. So yeah, the crossover is great. I purposely promoted the crossovers as much as I could. So the Resident Evil one was my pushing to get done. And then we did actually have the community build the Resident Evil stuff in Left 4 Dead. And that was just because I don't believe you can harm a strong IP by having them appear in other things. Instead, other people who have an affinity for those characters will see them in these other things and laugh and enjoy that. And so I was always, anytime anyone asked, I was like, yes, how do we figure this out? How do we do this? What do you need? I think the only weird one was in the Sniper series. They sent me this video of how it was going to appear. And I don't know if you're familiar with the Sniper series. The Sniper series is World War II, Germans versus Allies. And they sent me this video, which ended with Zoe grabbing a sniper rifle, looking down the sights, seeing Hitler, a zombie Hitler on the other end of it, and shooting him in the head. And I think that's the only piece of feedback I gave to them was too much Hitler. And just felt weird. It felt there was too much baggage with that to have that. But otherwise, it was like, do what you want, do what you understand these characters.
A lot of these crossovers actually would use different voices for them. Like, like some stock sound effects from the game, like pain sounds. Yeah, like,
well, because if you do the voice recording, you have to sign the contracts, which is, I don't know how much you ever talk about this on your side, but you have the right for the game, you have the right to use it outside of the game for promotion, and then you have some other right. There's like 3 rights you have to purchase. And so some people don't want to have to do that. And so we would always do that. So we had that availability to do that, but you equally can't put them in another game. To do another game, you would have to go back and you'd have to essentially pay all of that fees again. And the actor could choose to renegotiate at that point. And that would be between
I see.
that company and the actor, not us. And in fact, for Team Fortress 2, the heavy appears in,
the poker
VŌC
series?
Studios,
I think,
Surgeon Simulator.
Oh yeah.
Or is this Medic appear? I forget. The VŌC guys are friends as well. But they had to pay a bunch of money, and then they can only actually run the ad that used that voice for 1 year, and then they had to take it off of YouTube. Like, so there's always weirdness, and
so
that's why a
they'd
lot of
have
people don't
to
want those actors.
negotiate with the actors.
Yeah, it's with the actors union, and then the agents kind of thing. So it becomes this messy thing often, and that's why people don't use the voices sometimes.
I see.
It's too bad.
Those voices like are the property of Valve, right? Or the characters, I suppose.
Voices are always still we buy the rights to those, but it's always still the actor, right? But we buy the rights to use those very specifically for that game. Like, so we've had sessions where we asked an actor to do multiple voices. They can do multiple voices in one game, but I think if you get to more than 2 or 3, then you have to renegotiate something. It's to avoid being exploited, right? And I totally agree with the rules. So they're not overly complex, but you can't record one voice for 5 games.
Okay. And one last question before we wrap this up is, what is your opinion on, some of the voices or collaboration between the voices and the community? Do you support that or do you not support that?
Oh no,
It,
actors should choose to do what they want to do, and if they want to do some voice lines, I mean, at one point in there's a Left 4 Dead session where I knew we were going to have some gaps, and I went out to the community. And I asked, "What lines do you need for your mods?" And I think that's why you've got like Nick talking about a snowy mountaintop or something, right?
oh yeah, there is some stuff like that. Or like
And
Francis saying
so
that he's cold. Yeah, I know.
we would go out and ask for that because I support the community that way. And I think it's important. And if the actors want to do it on their own dime, rock on, do it. Like I'm totally for that.
Could they not get in legal trouble for that?
I if it was ever asked if we should sue somebody, I would say no. It's me. I actually don't know the legality of that, but I think actors bring a lot to the sessions. And when people talk about like AI taking over and all that crap, uh, I don't ever not want to have an actor take over stuff. Like I was talking about Liu, the actress Annie who voices her, is amazing because I could say the lines whatever, and the way she will read it is just so good because she just brings this humor and energy to everything she talks about. And it's just like I can't capture that with AI. I can't manufacture that. That is that
Yes,
actor
yeah.
choosing to do that. And so I really, really love the actors for that. And so I support them. And if they want to run off and do something crazy, run off and do something crazy, whatever.
Yeah, and that's an amazing way to end this episode. Yeah, actors are important, and I don't think AI will ever replace emotion
No.
and everything that the actors bring into the sessions and the video games and or whatever else they
Yep.
record for. All right, Chad. I need to say that I'm very proud of this interview. I want to thank you for hopping on and being interested in coming on. Honestly,
Sure.
I think it's been a lot of fun, and I think we've discussed interesting topics. And I hope to stay in touch with you and play the Anacrusis and
Yeah. Shoot me a note when you post this up and I'll let people know about it.